What's going on, Art Wanderers? It's me once again, Sir Harold, your Wonder Art teacher, and still you're watching Valenzuela Live. Are you ready to time travel once more and explore different places full of wonderful things? Buckle up and be ready with your paper, pen, and self-learning packet as we continue our Art Wonderful expedition on the arts of Neoclassic and Romantic periods, only here in the Art Wonderland.
Time travel and seize the world with full fun of learning. Discover the arts and crafts that represents culture and traditions. This is the Art Wonderland.
As a constant reminder, before we begin our Art Wonderful expedition, let us always be reminded of the protocols to follow during the live streaming class.
Protocols to follow during the live streaming class. Respect everyone. Agree to recognize and abide by the protocols in the live stream and respect the feelings, rights, or traditions of everyone. No hate speech. Do not express or discourage violence towards a person or group based on something such as race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. Be guided with the anti-cyberbullying law. Make sure that everyone feels safe. Bullying of any kind isn't allowed, and degrading comments about things such as race, religion, culture, sexual orientation, gender, or identity will not be tolerated. No promotion of products or items. Give more to this group than you take. Selling of products, self-promotion, spam, and irrelevant links aren't allowed. Use appropriate words in giving suggestions, comments, and queries. We're all in this together to create a welcoming environment. Let's treat everyone with respect. Healthy debates are natural, but kindness is required. After the FB live streaming, attend follow-up discussion in the different platforms provided by your subject teachers such as Messenger, Google Classroom, Google Meet, or MS Teams. Maximize the features of the different platforms to deepen your understanding of the competencies with the help of your subject teachers.
I hope everyone will be guided by the protocols for us to maintain order during our session. At the end of our Art Wonderful expedition, you are expected to create artworks guided by techniques and styles of the Neoclassic and Romantic periods. Describe the influence of iconic artists belonging to the Neoclassic and Romantic periods. Apply different media techniques and processes to communicate ideas, experiences, and stories showing the characteristics of the Neoclassic and Romantic periods. Evaluate works of art in terms of artistic concepts and ideas using criteria from the Neoclassic and Romantic period. Show the influences of Neoclassic and Romantic periods on Philippine art forms. And participate in an exhibit using completed artworks with Neoclassic and Romantic periods characteristics. To see if you remember our previous tour, our art travel buddy Bunky is back to guide and assist you in completing the task titled All About Neoclassic and Romantic Arts.
Let's recap the first part of our tour on the arts of the Neoclassic and Romantic periods with your first task today, all about Neoclassic and Romantic arts. Each number will contain a description of an artist, artwork, artistic elements and principles, and characteristics from the Neoclassical and Romantic periods, and you will select which of the given options is being described. You can either type your answers into our comments section or write them directly on your answer sheets. You will be given 5 seconds for each item. Are you ready? Let's begin. Number 1. Which of the following architectural styles does not fall under the umbrella of Neoclassical architecture? Classical block style, Neo-Gothic style, Palladian style, Temple style. Did you respond Neo-Gothic style? You're correct. Because Neo-Gothic architecture is considered the architectural manifestation of Romanticism. Number 2. The two movements, Neoclassicism and Romanticism, are diametrically opposed and exhibit distinct characteristics in their artworks. Which of the following does not describe Romantic art? Dramatic compositions, emotional extremes, formal composition, heightened sensation. Formal composition is the right answer. It is one of the characteristics of neoclassical art, which contrasts sharply with the dramatic compositions of Romantic art. Number 3. Portrait paintings in famous Romantic artists of the Romantic period focuses on emotion, and the artists of this time expressed as much feeling and passion as they could on a canvas. Which of the following famous artists was not a painter of the Romantic period? Eugene Delacroix, Francisco Goya, Jacques-Louis David, Jean-Louis Theodore Géricault. You are correct, Jacques-Louis David. Because he is a well-known French painter in the neoclassical style, who is widely regarded as the preeminent painter of his time. Number 4.
teacher.
And I am Bonki, your art travel buddy.
And always remember, art is not a mirror held up to reality, but rather a hammer used to shape it. Stay safe, everyone. Have a good day, and see you on the last leg of our tour.
The Art Wonderland.